Now that we've seen the Republican game plan in action in Wisconsin, vote by mail has to happen this fall. Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and please subscribe to our channel. The Republican war on voting rolls on. You know, the president has acknowledged this. Numerous Republican politicians around the country have acknowledged that, going back to 1980, Paul Weyrich famously, when he was campaigning for Ronald Reagan, said, the voting, our leverage in the elections quite candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down. And now the Supreme Court has gotten into the act. Yesterday, after we got off the air, Tony Evers, the Democratic governor of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Supreme Court is 4-6 Republicans. And Tony Evers yesterday had said, no, we're going to, we haven't even gotten all the ballots out to people for vote by mail, for absentee balloting. And so we're going to extend until the first week of June, the period of time in which you can get the ballots back to us. And the state Supreme Court said, no, you can't. And then the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, you can't. The city with the largest black population in Wisconsin, the most Democratic area of Wisconsin, the most Democratic city in Wisconsin, maybe parts of Madison are right up there too, but is Milwaukee. And Milwaukee normally has 180 polling places. Well, they depend on volunteers to staff those polling places, and so they only have 5 open today. In rural areas around the state, they've got the state police, they've got local officials staffing the places. And no problem at all. In the white rural areas, you can easily show up and vote, and you've got social distancing and everything else. But if you want to vote in Milwaukee, if you're black, you're going to take your life in your hands. I mean, that is what that's basically what they said. In fact, here's the Supreme Court decision. This was RNC versus DNC, basically. And this is from Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dissent. And in the dissent, I'm reading from the dissent to yesterday's Supreme Court decision. Quote, because gathering at the polling place now poses dire health risks, an unprecedented number of Wisconsin voters, at the encouragement of public officials, have turned to absentee voting. Accommodating the surge of absentee ballot requests has heavily burdened election officials, resulting in a severe backlog of ballots requested but not promptly mailed to voters. The court's order requires absentee voters to postmark their ballots by Election Day, April 7th, that's today, i.e. tomorrow, this is from the decision, even if they did not receive their ballots by that day. That is a novel requirement. Yeah, you think? You have to send in your absentee ballot even if you haven't gotten it yet, otherwise it won't be counted. Ruth Bader Ginsburg continues, the court's order, I fear, will result in massive disenfranchisement. Well, of course it will. That's why they're doing it. A voter cannot deliver for postmarking a ballot she has not received, yet tens of thousands of voters who timely requested ballots are unlikely to receive them by April 7th, the court's postmark deadline. She continues, the court's suggestion that the current situation is not, quote, substantially different from an ordinary election, end quote, boggles the mind. Some 150,000 requests for absentee ballots have been processed since Thursday, state records indicate. As of Sunday morning, 12,000 ballots reportedly have not yet been mailed out. It takes days for a mailed ballot to reach its recipient. The Postal Service recommends budgeting a week, even without accounting for pandemic-induced mail delays. So here you've got the Republican Party saying, no, we don't want people to vote. We've got a really important Supreme Court case here on the election. We want to get our right-winger reelected to the Supreme Court. It's really important. And, we know that in the rural areas of the state, there's going to be no problem. The virus hasn't really hit the rural areas of the state. People are more than willing to show up. They're almost all white. Large percentages of them watch Fox so-called news and listen to right-wing hate radio. So, hey, what's your problem, people? Meanwhile, the New York Times is reporting that 3 different investment vehicles inside the Trump family have invested heavily in the French company, Sanofi, that makes hydrochloroquine, the anti-malaria drug that Trump has been pushing as a way to treat COVID-19. We're also now seeing for the first time in our country, for the first time in the history of our country, what it's actually like when you take a wannabe mob boss, lifelong grifter, and make him president of the United States. This is something, it's like a plot out of a bad Hollywood movie, but we're living it. It's just amazing. And an entire political party, the Republican Party, has thrown in with him. I mean, this is exactly what Alexander Hamilton warned us about in the Federalist Papers. I think it was Federalist 65, where he's going on about the reason for the Electoral College was to keep out men of low character. It's just incredible. Meanwhile, Plaquenil is the name of the drug in France. The company, and the French company, is the one that Trump has invested in. They own the patent for the brand name version. The drug comes with severe side effects ranging from nausea and hair loss to blindness and heart attacks. And as a consequence of that, the Swedish hospitals are saying, enough, we're not going to use this drug anymore. They've had people have terrible, terrible side effects as a result of using this drug. And so they're saying, no, I think we'll pass on this. This Rosie McCall over at Newsweek, writing, as of 2 weeks ago, Karolinska University Hospital stopped all use of chloroquine in the treatment of COVID-19. Several hospitals in Sweden have reportedly stopped administering chloroquine to coronavirus patients following reports the drug was causing adverse side effects. Among the side effects, you can die of a heart attack. Yeah, wonderful. Excuse me. Yeah, right. Don't cough on the air, Tom. So here we have, we've got the Supreme Court throwing in with the right-wingers. We've got the Wisconsin Supreme Court, when one of their own is on the ballot today. You've got now Peter Navarro. Peter Navarro has been on this program several times in the past. It's been quite a few years, but he's been a trade hawk for years. He's been opposed to offshoring American jobs, as were most of the members of the Democratic Party right up until 1992, when Bill Clinton kind of lurched the entire party to the corporate. I was going to say to the right, but it's really, this is corporate versus the people, basically. And, with NAFTA. And Peter Navarro, it turns out, back in January 29th, when Trump was still saying it's a Democratic hoax and it's going to vanish and it's going to be wonderful and don't worry, Peter Navarro wrote a memo to Trump and the White House team, specifically to the White House coronavirus team, saying you could have between 500,000 and 2 million. Actually, he had two memos that were about a week apart. The first one said 500,000 people could die. The second one said up to 2 million people could die. You guys have to do something. His memo also predicted, these are quotes from the memo, this lack of protection elevates the risk of the coronavirus evolving into a full-blown pandemic, imperiling the lives of millions of Americans. That was the one dated January 29th. The one dated February 23rd, he said that there's an increasing probability of a full-blown COVID-19 pandemic that could infect as many as 100 million Americans, with the loss of life of as many as 1.2 million souls. He urged immediate supplemental spending from Congress of $3 billion. He said this is not a time for penny pinching or horse trading on the Hill. He said, and he went on about this. I mean, any member of the task force who wants to be cautious about appropriating funds for a crisis that could inflict trillions of dollars in economic damage and take millions of lives has come to the wrong administration. No, apparently they're the right one. He said we need at least 1 billion face masks over a 4 to 6 year period. He was completely ignored, contradicted, and sidelined. It's breathtaking.